Hello and welcome to the Vine Life Podcast. I'm Tony Clark, your host. Today, my special guest is Grayson Russell. Now, Grayson is a singer-songwriter. He's also an actor. He's probably best known for his appearances in Talladega Nights and Diary of a Wimpy Kid. He's recently released his latest track, musically, Beneath the Bow. Now, in this song, Russell dives deep into the struggles of the American worker, capturing a meaningful comparison to the men laboring unseen in the Titanic's engine room. That's fascinating to me. So more information about Grayson can be found at his website. You can simply go to GraysonRussellOnline.com. Once again, GraysonRussellOnline.com. Grayson, it's an honor to have you on the program.
Yes, sir. Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And you've had an exciting career, and your acting roles are obvious, and we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. But I'm curious how your musicianship, I've been able to listen to some of your music and watch you play. You're phenomenally gifted. And I love your voice as well. I love your songwriting. What got you into making music? What was the spark there?
So the initial spark was I was 2 years old when I saw Pure Country for the first time, the George Strait cowboy movie. And on that soundtrack, there's a song called Heartland, which is kind of the theme of the film. And there's a toddler singing on it. And in my mind, as a toddler, I was like, well, if that kid can do it, then I can. There's no reason why I can't. And so that started me kind of on the trajectory that I've kept up thus far. I started traveling with my folks doing gospel music when I was 5. Sang on my dad's first record when I was 6, and then I've had bands my whole life. The current setup is a Southern rock band that I put together out of college 7 years ago. And then I travel and play utility for a guy who won a couple Grammys doing gospel music. So it's music has always gone in tandem with the film. I didn't mean to be an actor at all. Talladega Nights was in the newspaper. Dad had a tournament to fish, and me and Mama were bored. And that was how that kicked off and sparked a whole other side to my life. But I've always done music, and it's got more apparent over the past 3-4 years that, okay, now is the time for me to focus and lean in on this. And so here we are doing the thing.
Now, Grayson, you mentioned George Strait. What were some of the other influences as a kid, as a teenager, that really sparked your interest in the music world?
Man, my dad listened to George Strait a ton, which was kind of what got me there. When I was 7 years old, I stole in Christmas of 2004. I stole my dad's Bee Gees #1 CD, and was absolutely enamored by Barry Robin and Morris Gibb. And so I went and formed my own band, my fellow second graders, and we had a Bee Gees band. We sang solely Bee Gees music and "Have a Nice Day" by Bon Jovi. That was the only exception. And of course, when we started doing Talladega Nights, Will and Adam and Judd and the whole crew there really got a kick out of me being a Bee Gees fan. There's a deleted scene somewhere in Talladega Nights of me singing "How Deep Is Your Love" after Will and his wife split in the film. Those were the earliest ones for sure, and then a whole scat of different country and gospel artists. The Crab Family was really big vocally. I think Jason influenced a lot about how I sound, because that's what my dad sang in church. And so I started leading worship in the 7th grade and did that up through my undergrad for about 9 years on staff. So all kinds of different influences. They of course change over time. Our stuff, we always say, sounds somewhere between U2 and Leonard Skinner. Is about where I tend to land sonically, which is a little bit of a wide net, but there's a lot of influences in there.
It's funny listening to this latest single, I guess, Beneath the Bow, the inspiration from the Titanic. It kind of reminded me, just in a way, I'm kind of weird, but it kind of reminded me of the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald by Gordon Lightfoot, but with a much harder edge. It had to do with a ship, I guess. Did that song influence you in any way?
Absolutely. The way I wanted to structure some of the vocal reverb, I wanted to pull from the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. I love that song, and it's funny because there's not a lot of, unless we're talking like sea shanties, there's not a lot of of context or content to really pull from as far as, songs about ships and shipwrecks, outside of, maybe Jimmy Buffett. But yeah, that song really was a, I guess a reference, for certainly, post-op mixing it, as to how I wanted it to kind of play out. There's certainly, there's different things to me that I want to pay homage to across what this album will be. For me, I wanted to write the whole album, number one. And to me, I wanted the bones of it to be built on what I thought would make, to me, the greatest country record. Beneath the Bow, I leans more towards something like a Gordon Lightfoot, which is a little bit of an offshoot. But Corn and Kerosene, for me, is the closest I'll ever get to doing something like Copperhead Road. There's a song called I'm Gonna Leave that'll be on the record that'll be really close to like a George Strait kind of unwound situation. The next song out, called Turned Out Good, is my version of a song called This Ain't Nothing by Craig Morgan. When I think of what songs to me make the best country record, if I could have my pick or 10 or 15 songs and put them into one, content wise, where would it go? And that's the part of the kind of wide net, no pun intended, with Beneath the Bow that I was trying to cast.
That song Beneath the Bow, it really, I think you're, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but you're really kind of paying, in my opinion, you're paying homage to the American worker, the struggles of the American worker. You want to tie that in for us? What about the American worker inspires you from this song?
Well, I've been one my whole life. My parents have been one. I thought I was going to be a peach farmer or an architect. Like I said earlier, I had no intention of being an actor. I had every intention of doing music, to the extent of my frame. But the cover art is me when I worked a scaffold crew at about 140 feet up in the air over a paper mill. A lot of people don't necessarily, when they think of actors, it's usually just spoiled rotten kids, certainly child actors. But I've grown up doing stuff like that my whole life. I was not shielded from manual labor, not one bit. And Beneath the Bow, the thing that really stood out to me was just the comparison, because it was a song that I was kind of given and said, hey, take this and make it what you will. And I trust you to make this song make sense. And so I was able to kind of take the reins with the lyrics and the arrangement and form them in a way that I felt like I could communicate effectively. But Beneath the Bow looks at a guy working in the boiler room in comparison to the guys that I worked on a scaffold crew with, or half my family builds roads, or whatever, the individuals that make this country run. Compares it to this man in the boiler room going, hey, all you people up top, there's crap going on down here, and this ship, no different than this country, ain't gonna make it if we don't pivot and figure something out here. Because the partying it ain't gonna do us any good. We're all gonna go down if this unit Beneath the Bow here goes down. And so that's been the kind of correlation. I've kind of called it the song for the ignored. Really, the song for the ignored and the neglected, the people that make this country run that so often get, overlooked and overthought. How many people do you walk by that's wearing, a neon green vest when you're driving down the road that you don't think about? They're the reason why this road isn't underwater right now, is because the pipes put under there. Simple. But it's stuff that we overlook so oftentimes. But for whatever reason, we tend to look at people that are in movies and go, oh, that's something really fantastic and cool and influential. And it's like, hell, dude, they didn't build the house you're sitting in or put the roof over your head, or, it's easy to get priorities out of line. And I know I'm one to talk coming from that environment, but it's one that when I'm not here, I'm working with Dad. We just finished, well, I guess this would have been back last year before I kind of officially moved over here, digging 2 foot by 2 foot by 5 foot deep holes with post hole diggers as the footings for my uncle's house, which ended up being railroad ties. It was god awful. But anyway, it compares the life of those working beneath the bow, the people with jobs that we'd always call from the neck down. That's what they do. And I feel like
and Grayson, go ahead.
No, you're fine.
Go ahead.
I've been consistently amazed at after playing that song, the people that come up to me, particularly veterans, they're like, man, I work beneath the bow. Thank you. You know, that song's something that I can identify with, which is a blessing. For me, I didn't really want to do original songs to start with because I thought there's nothing I can make that would be any more influential or any more fun to listen to than listening to Freebird. Why would I do that when that's already there? And I know that's something I can do well. But it wasn't until COVID that I got really, really sideways and mad at how the world was going and was moved to write. And that and a dozen different heartbreaks later, working it into the sets that we had, we realized that we had something that could make people laugh and dance and make them cry and make them sit and think, which is a blessing, far beyond anything that I could have ever thought or asked.
Well, Grayson, you talked about those forgotten blue collar workers. I know you're going to get a great response to this song because that's what most of the country is those blue collar workers, that flyover country, which folks make fun of. But without that flyover country, this country would not work. So I know you're going to get a tremendous response from that song.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, I hope so, because it's, like I said, it's been kind of the anthem for the ignored. The song isn't for me, even though it's something that I really identify with. But it's for, if you don't have a voice, here's you one. You know, and you can blare it at max capacity, whether you're in your F-150 or you're in your Taurus or whatever you're riding around in.
Very, very inspiring, and I'm glad to hear music like this. So God bless you, man, for having the heart to make this type of music. Grayson, I'm curious. I always ask musicians, singer-songwriters, what's their writing process? How do you craft a song? Are you driving down the road and you just got a tune in your head and you put lyrics to it, or do you sit down with a guitar? And what's your typical songwriting process to write a song?
For me, without trying to get too artsy fartsy with it, I have to be moved to write. I have to be really, really affected by something, whether it's a relationship I'm in or it's an issue in my own family, or it's something going on in the world that I feel really, really strongly about. For me, I don't really care to write about anything I don't know or can't authentically communicate, because that's somebody else's job. My biggest issue is watching people sing songs that I don't believe that they believe in what they're singing about. And for me, I don't want to write anything that I don't know or haven't expressly walked through, because then it's not authentic. Writing usually for me comes, I'll get the words and the melody at the same time. My only issue is sometimes that melody might be similar to something I've written previously. And so kind of pulling that kind of strand out of there. I tell people, for me, songwriting is, I had a friend who was or have a friend, he's in his 90s, who was the only doctor we had in the county or in the town for probably 20 years back in the day, when he had a segregated waiting room in the 60s, and then coming through that, the whole deal. And I asked him, what was his favorite part about working as a doctor? Because it was before you could send people off to specialists. You had to be able to do everything. And he said, man, my favorite part about it was delivering babies, delivering children. He said, I think I did about 3,000, give or take one or two. He said, it was my favorite part because it's the only time you walked into a hospital with an issue and you came out with something worth having. And wow. That's how I feel about songwriting. It's the only thing that, maybe not the only thing, but one of the major things that when I'm walking through an incredibly, seemingly monstrous life situation, it's the only thing where I'm able to go through that potentially horrific experience and come out with something that's better than what I had to begin with. And something that hopefully at some point somebody else can go, yeah, man, that's how I'm feeling right now, and look at it and go, okay, well, that's how you made it through it. I don't know if that'll work for me, but we'll give it a shot. Or, yeah, that sounds like a good idea, but the way you're putting it, that actually doesn't work, and that's a horrible idea, and don't do it. If I can put as many cautionary tales out there for my own life as I can, I absolutely will. That's kind of been the process for me. I wish it was far easier. I would rather the next album somebody else live through all the hell and just write it and me sing it, because it isn't fun. Most of the time it's not. But it's a human experience, and it's not always going to be.
Amen to that. Yeah, I love to interview folks that are obviously successful like yourself in what they love to do, and you're an exceptional musician, singer, songwriter, and I can obviously see that. But you're also an exceptionally gifted actor as well, and you're currently acting in a show called Blue Ridge. Is that correct? Tell me a little bit about that.
Blue Ridge, the series. So I've been really blessed. I've always done film my whole life. Like I said, the last one was a World War II film with Tom Hanks called Greyhound. We got nominated for an Oscar for that, which was a blessing. But growing up, I grew up in a small town. Planton, Alabama's got about 9,000 people in it. My whole family more or less live on the same road. I graduated high school with the kids I went to preschool with. My teachers either taught my mom or went to school with her. I said all that to say, with TV, it's a far longer physical commitment to wherever you're working. And I didn't want to move the family. So I really focused more on film the first 18 years of my life. And then once I got over, it's like, okay, cool. Well, now that I'm graduated, mom doesn't have to be with me the whole time, and I don't have to uproot the family because I've got a TV show I'm going to be on for the next 8 years or something like that. So Blue Ridge has been a real blessing. It's the first time I've ever been a regular on a TV show. I played Dwayne Dixon, which I really just compared to as the helpful village idiot, like a Festus almost. That's the easiest. I play Festus to an older crowd understand exactly what I'm talking about. Festus minus the limp. I love it. It's one of the first real projects in my adult career that I've been given a scary amount of freedom with the character in Dwayne to go, hey, we understand that you understand redneckery in this character maybe a little better than we do, and we're going to trust you enough to convey it. Certainly honor that, and there's a line and don't cross it. But we're going to give you room to explore. And explore is kind of a big word, but it's really, I'm just playing a mix of all the people I graduated high school with. I just talk a little higher and walk with a little bit more of a I don't know, a little giddy or happy-go-lucky kind of pluck to it. But I really, really, really love getting to play Dwayne. It's been a blessing.
Now, fill us in a little bit on the premise of Blue Ridge. Give us some background. What's the show about?
So Blue Ridge follows a retired special forces operator, this guy named Justin Wise, who ends up being the town sheriff. It's kind of a hillbilly hallmark. I call it Redneck Clue, and it follows all the craziness that might occur in Blue Ridge, Georgia. We film in Charlotte, which is where we did Talladega Nights, the TV show set in Blue Ridge, Georgia. There's always some kind of craziness going on that I end up being in the middle of most of the time, not on purpose. But there's two kind of warring clans going on, the McGraths and the Wades, led by A. Martinez and Tom Proctor, who are both incredible actors in their own right. Tom Proctor coming from Guardians of the Galaxy and all kinds of other mess. A. Martinez, John Wayne taught him how to throw a punch when he played Cimarron in the Cowboys when he was 15. So it's really wild to look at somebody else who was maybe not a small child actor, but one who started at a relatively young age, no different than I did, and has made a life in it. But it follows Justin, played by Jonathan Sheck. Most people know him as the lead from That Thing You Do, as he tries to navigate all the hostilities that might occur in Blue Ridge, Georgia.
Yeah, and this sounds like one of those bingeable watch shows. My wife and I, we love to sit down and watch like 2 years worth of shows within a month period or something like that. So, yeah, it definitely sounds like something we want to get into and enjoy.
The beautiful thing about Blue Ridge is it's one that, like I said, we call it Hillbilly Hallmark. It's on the Inspiration Network or Western Bound TV. I grew up sitting with my granddad watching John Wayne movies all the time, every day. That's all that ran. And so it's one that they really wanted to purposely make to where it's safe enough where, it's going to be fun. It's going to have a lot of action, but it's not going to be so gratuitous that you don't really have to worry about grandkids coming in, because odds are grandpa's going to have INSP cut on watching Westerns, and you don't want to have to kind of switch it over and be something that everybody can sit and watch and enjoy.
Well, it sounds like a phenomenal program to watch. I just encourage folks to look it up and start binge watching it if you can. So it sounds like a great program. Grayson, I'm curious. You've got an extensive. You're well known as a child actor, and you're continuing into adulthood and being very successful as an actor. But I interviewed Paul Peterson. He used to be on the Donna Reed show as a child, and he formed an organization called A Minor Consideration, and it really is helping young actors and helping actors navigate the Hollywood industry to keep them safe. And I'm just curious, for folks that are trying to get their kids into acting, would you have any advice for them? Because I know that you see that a lot. Folks want to get their kids into commercials, into acting, into Hollywood. What advice would you give them?
I mean, my greatest gift was an incredibly tentative mother. She, as is required per SAG, per the Screen Actors Guild, she's got to be within sight or sound of me at all times. My greatest, probably the thing that probably saved me from a whole lot of hell is, and I didn't really love it at first, but was the fact that I was able to achieve a relative amount of success early on, but it was inconsistent. We'd do Talladega Nights, and it would be 2 years, and we'd do another movie. Then it'd be 2 years, and okay, we're doing Wimpy Kid, and we're bam, 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 bam. We do like 6 movies, and then it was like a 3-4 year gap of doing nothing. And what I'm trying to get at is, it was inconsistent enough that I was able to come back home to Clanton, Alabama, and that not become my identity, number one. But also there was never a relative amount of comfort with me being by myself with other individuals, because, you know, we might be working on a film for 2 months and we go home. It's not 8 years on a TV show where, okay, you get really close to a producer and then, you know, all right, well, cool. Yeah, you can go off with him for a little while and you lose the shelter of, you know, my mom or a guardian being there. So I'd stay close to mom or dad or whoever it is that's there to be with you, because my greatest, even though it wasn't the sexiest thing in the world to have my mom everywhere with me, the thing that I could always count on was that while I'm acting and I've got all these cameras around me, I could look to the back of the room, the back of the studio, or the back of the set, and know that my mom is watching the monitors and she knows what I'm capable of. And more than anybody else, she knew when I was doing a really good job or knew when I was being awful. And, you know, or even little things like, hey, pick your head up just a little bit. And I could look and have that confidence in the back to know that whether the director's paying attention to me or not, or this is happening or that's happening, I've got somebody back there in my corner like none other. And that was an incredible asset to have, not only for my own personal safety, but for my professional success, was having my mom with me. So for anybody who's wanting to get into it, listen to your folks and stay up under them. That has saved certainly my personal and professional life.
Very wise, very sound advice, and I'm sure people will take that to heart. But thank you for that, Grayson. Grayson, I've got to ask this question. You've worked with so many. You worked with what we think of as famous individuals, famous actors. You worked with Tom Hanks in Greyhound. I've got to ask the question: what was it like working with Tom Hanks?
Tom was somebody that I never would have dreamed of working with. You know, I mean, you have people that you want to work with, but then there's an entirely different level of people you don't even consider. Like that ain't even, you don't even dream about getting to work with Tom Hanks, because that's not going to happen. You know, like that's never going to happen. Tom is precious. He's the most least intimidating individual I've ever worked with. He ended up being a big Talladega Nights fan, which threw me for a loop, because that's like, you know, growing up in Alabama, that's like Nick Saban saying, hey man, I watched your highlight reel last week and I loved it. You know, it was on TV last night. I was very thankful to get to work with him and watch somebody that has been at the top of their game, of their craft, of their industry for the past 40 years plus. Tom was incredible, is incredible. Always been very kind to me. Wonderful to work with. Masterclass, obviously. Tom's the man. And also, I've been really blessed we've had a lot of people that a lot of mutual connections that we work with. The reason why I was able to stay in the business is because Michael Clark Duncan, the big guy from the Green Mile, obviously who worked with Tom on that, set me up with his manager at the premiere of Talladega Nights, and that's how I was able to stay in the business. And so I owe my entire professional career post Talladega Nights to Michael Clark Duncan, and obviously they were incredibly close. It's been a blessing because getting to work, for as long as I have. I mean, next year will be 20 years, and I'm 26. The being able to work with people like Will and Judd and John and Jane or Steve Zahn on Wimpy Kid or David James Elliott or Danny Glover as a young age has always been incredible. And whenever I have young actors that I'm working with now, kids that might be 10 or 12, hey, my biggest piece of advice is take all this in, because no different than, me being able to see Bon Jovi live as a kid. 30, 40 years from now, there'll be very few people that will be able to say that. That'll be my age. I love it. I love getting to do it. But Tom was incredible.
Yeah. Well, amazing. And it's certainly a blessing that you've been able to walk all of these avenues and paths, and they've opened up for you. I'm just curious. I believe you're a man of faith. How has your faith guided you through on this journey?
Oh, it's been the whole thing. I got saved when we were doing Talladega Nights at a Central Church of God over in Charlotte. My granddad was the youngest of 6, and he was paralyzed when he was 7. He got rheumatic fever that strep throat turned into rheumatic fever and paralyzed him. And so he scooted around on his butt, and his dad was a belligerent alcoholic, and this would have been 1952 maybe. And they're like, look, kid, you're going to croak. Penicillin ain't a thing, but we'll take you to a tent revival over here and see what happens if you want to go. And the whole family stands outside with this crippled child in their arms arguing about who's going to have to take him in this church service. They took him in. The evangelist prayed for him. He hadn't walked in 8 months, and he took off running. Bam, miraculously healed.
Wow.
After that, the whole family converts, builds the church I was raised in. And that's, faith is in Jesus Christ is my center. There's no getting around that. Have I deviated at different times in my life? Absolutely. And Lord, you'll be able to look at that just through this album, because it's not a Christian record. But it's certainly, if nothing else, is my life. And it's not all good and it's not all bad, but I try to be sure that, even with the roles that I take as an actor, what story are we telling, and is it glorifying or gratifying something that, the good Lord ain't on par with? Or is it something that's saying, hey, this is going to get you killed, man, or this is not the way to do it? Like I said earlier, if anything, I hope, maybe this album is a lesson in maybe what not to do. But yes, sir, faith is everything to me.
Wow. Great advice. A great life. I thank you for that. Thank you for being honest. And many, many times we as Christians, we try to put on this mask of something we're not many times, and we do fall. But thankfully, God brings us back to where we should be. So thank you for that.
Always faithful. Yes, sir.
Grayson, I'm just curious, when you're not acting, when you're not a singer-songwriter, what do you do?
Sleeping. Usually that's about all I have time to do. I was out till about 4 o'clock in the morning with an after party for the BMI's award. So that was wild. Ended up, hanging out there. So that ran till about 4 in the morning. And then I've got, I think, 4 or 5 different podcasts I got to do today. And then we'll have the CMAs tonight and after party for that. And then tomorrow I got to play a show. I think tomorrow I got to play a show at about 9 o'clock. And then I guess Friday, there's no telling. I've got a handful of things I got to do Friday as well. So really it's no different than the song Corn and Kerosene, which was the first single we released. That's about how hard will you go? What will you sell? What will you do to make your life and your dreams that without a doubt you're supposed to be following? How hard will you push to make it shake, make it happen? And so for me, my life entirely revolves around being sure that, I'm doing what I'm called to do, because I feel like the calling that I have is particularly specific and is owed the maximum amount of effort I can put into it to the extent of my frame. And so whether that's 5 podcasts and a networking event till 4 o'clock in the morning, or whether it's not. Sorry, I just had a phone call come in on my computer. I hope that didn't mess nothing up.
Yeah, you're fine.
It's my life revolves around it, and I try to sleep in the middle. I woke up. I went to bed at about 5 and woke up at 12 and had a radio show at 12:15. And thankfully, they didn't make me ask me to sing anything. But one day at a time.
Yeah. Well, Grayson, I can't tell you how much of an honor, man, it is that you've come on the program and telling us about your latest works, your latest music, your latest acting in the series called Blue Ridge. If someone wants to download your albums, buy your music, watch what you're doing on TV or at the movies, what's the best way to get in touch with you? How do they find out more about you?
The best thing they can do is follow me. So on any of my social platforms, it's Grayson, Grayson C as in cat, Russell with 2 S's and 2 L's. That'll have everything that I'm doing. I'll post about it. Somebody will know about it. From there, you can access all my stuff on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, iHeartRadio, the whole deal. And share it. If you like it, share it, listen to it, and tell somebody about it, because it's something that most of the things really all the things that I've written are things that are incredibly important to me. And if it's something you identify with, then praise the Lord. And if it don't float your boat, let me know what does, because I'll be interested to see if it's something I can communicate.